What is it about a 96-year-old woman, no longer able to speak or get out of her bed, that draws 21 people together in her apartment days before her death? In stark contrast to that image, why are some people so alone with themselves and their thoughts as they grow older? I had the good fortune to call that 96-year-old woman my mom. She had the ability to see in others strengths that they sometimes couldn't see in themselves, and to repackage and return it as a gift. In 1937, as a 21-year-old first-year high school teacher, she had the patience, curiosity, and grit to ask Joey, a 10th grader in her English class, to return after school so she could understand why he had written such an indecipherable essay on the Merchant of Venice. When he told her to fail him like everyone else had, she told him she couldn't do that because she knew he was one of the brightest thinkers in her class. Although dyslexia was not then a term in the American educational lexicon, and when she met Joey, she'd never encountered someone so intelligent who had such poor written language, her experience with Joey stayed with her and led her to become a pioneering researcher, teacher, and advocate in the field of dyslexia. When she was approaching 50 years old, she gathered herself and her thoughts together, began the journey toward her doctorate, and while pursuing her own education, contacted the president of Curry College and ultimately convinced him to give her 1 year to create what would become the first program in the United States for college-able dyslexics. And once the program proved to be a success, she received invitations to lecture about it and saw to its replication nationally and internationally. 25 years later, at 75 years old, she decided it was time for her refirement. Note that she never called it her retirement. Instead of retiring from what had clearly been a rich and satisfying career, she was getting fired up for her next chapter. And what a remarkable next chapter she had. A former student of hers asked if she would direct a center he intended to found in her name, a venue for her to continue her lifelong passion of teaching students how to work to their strengths. When she agreed, the Webb Innovation Center for Dyslexia was born. She directed the center for the next 20 years, continuing to train teachers, teach parents, counsel children, and speak around the globe. Growing up, our family mantra was you can disagree, but you can't be disagreeable. And all these many years later, it still stands us in good stead. Find, sift, look for others' strengths. It is perhaps in no small measure what led me as a lawyer with a background in education and psychology to break down the silos between law and psychology so that my family law practice could help divorcing clients thoughtfully restructure their lives and those of their families so that they could optimize their collective outcomes. She gave me the confidence to believe that I could look outside the traditional English contract law paradigm to see divorce not only as a time of dissolution and division, but also as a time of opportunity, renewal, and growth. My mom's ability to help people realize their own unique gifts often created hope where there had been none. And I think her ability to do that had to do with her seeing or sensing or finding the strengths in other people. The ability to move beyond self, the ability to be focused on others, is almost like sifting for gold. It's an art, and it takes patience and clarity of mind. Finding others' strengths is not about putting on rose-colored glasses and singing platitudes to them. Even very young children can sense a disingenuous compliment and readily dismiss it as meaningless. Taking the time to truly discover what inner resources others bring to the table requires persistence, curiosity, and the differentiation requisite to recognize that I am not you and your needs are not mine. Some people have this skill more naturally than others, but I truly believe that it's a skill all people can develop. In fact, it's part attitude and part skill. The old truism that it's more important to be interested than interesting is part of it, but it's certainly not all of it. In order to give back, you also need to know your own strengths. The magic lies somewhere in between the strength spheres that permeate every contact between two people. As the composer Claude Debussy said, the music happens between the notes. My mom's life was rich with connections and collaborations. Every day was one where new possibilities and adventures were waiting. She had a strong sense of self, but no sense of entitlement. In her mind, one's actions and not one's position is what commanded respect. Whether she was teaching in inner-city Boston classrooms or a palace in Amman, Jordan, the same expectations were the cornerstone of each and every interaction. Just as people have strengths, they have challenges too. This is where the attitude of the individual comes into play. As a listener, what are we trying to hear? Are we listening for strengths or eager to criticize? Are we looking for a sparring partner or a means of building bridges? What is it that we bring to an interaction, and what is it that we hope to take away? Part of the life lesson I received from my mom was that speaking up isn't enough. How you speak matters too. It's important that our thoughts be principled, our words meaningful, our connections compassionate, and that we leave the world better than we found it. Interactions are changed when people see others as windows and not mirrors. If we look to others for an affirmation of and a reflection of ourselves, we will most certainly be disappointed. However, if, as with snowflakes, we expect differences, we're more likely to find beauty in the uniqueness of the individual before us. Our communications then become windows out of which we see into others vast landscapes of minds and ideas, perspectives and creativity. All of which brings me back to the 21 people gathered in the apartment of that 96-year-old woman who, although no longer able to speak or get out of her bed, continued to act as a magnet to the many people whose lives she had impacted so profoundly. Her ability to see beyond self, to give without expecting anything in return, to balance her internal and external worlds in a way that enriched her life and strengthened whomever she met, came with a multitude of unexpected returns. The gold she'd sifted all her life was in her final hours gathered together and returned as the ultimate gift.